So in class, we diagrammed how to draw out a proper streak plate. So I'm not going to really go over that. I'm just going to go over the basic technique of making a streak plate. So here's my plate, properly labeled. Notice, by the way, you always label the back of the plate, not the lid. And the reason for that is, if I were to label my lid, so let's label the lid. Lid. If I were to label my lid and I accidentally drop my plate, and then everything falls out, and my lids are the only thing that are labeled, it's like, oh, which sample goes on where? I don't even really know, right? But if you label the backs of your plates and everything drops out, it's like, okay, well, I know that this is this sample and this is that sample, right? So always label the backs of the plates, and in general, get used to working with lid side down. So keep the lids down. It's much easier to manipulate when I open my plate. I open, manipulate, close. Right? But also when you incubate these things, you want to make sure that it's lid down, because when the bacteria start to metabolize, let's see, there we go, I have bacteria growing here. You start to get some condensation on the lid. So if you keep things lit up, that condensation can and will drip onto your plate, and that kind of ruins everything. Okay, so lid down. Here we have our loop. Sterilize in the flame, near the flame, don't let it leave the flame area. While this is cooling, I'm going to take stock. Here's my culture. Here, this is what bacteria look like, by the way. I have a bunch of bacteria growing on here. I'm going to choose one of these guys. Here's my sterile plate that I'm going to inoculate. And again, the purpose of a streak plate is to isolate it out. Notice I have a bunch of mixtures here. I have a bunch of different bacteria here, big guys, little guys. Right? I just want to make sure that I have a nice pure culture, or a culture where I have only one single bacterium growing. Right? In order to do that, we do our streak plate. So I'm going to grab my inoculum, lid down so I can flip it up, choose one colony, and let's see, I'm just going to go pick this guy. Bing. And hopefully I picked only that guy, but I may have picked more. Not a big deal, because the streak plate will help us spread it out. Right? And then Quadrant One, remember, it's all about inoculating. So I'm just going to inoculate side to side. I'm going to keep it nice and small. Let the weight of the loop do the work, and about a 45-degree angle. Okay? Don't push down too hard. Don't come up too high. Don't come up too low. And then sterilize. And the purpose of Quadrant One is simply to inoculate. You can just go back and forth all you want. I guess one of the things I want to point out, if you're looking at the side of the plate, the thin edge of the loop, so how can you see this? Okay, so this is the loop. The thin edge of the loop is presented when you turn, and on all you see is a wire. So you want to use that tip right there, not the loop side. If you are looking at the loop, that's not the right edge. You want to look at it like this and use the very tip right there. Okay? Alright, so now I'm going to go and do my second quadrant. Again, by the flame, lift it up, start behind, and if you, let's see, I don't know if you can see it in the video, you can kind of see the streak marks right there, sort of. Right, I can see them. Start behind in the middle, and usually I pull through twice, just like that, and then back and forth like that for a second quadrant. Close, we're going to sterilize, and remember, we want to sterilize after every quadrant, because we want to make sure that we're just spreading a small amount of the bacteria from the previous quadrant over the rest of the new quadrant. Right? And then as we continue to spread it out, the plate, or the amount of bacteria, gets less and less and less and less, such that eventually all you're doing is spreading individual cells. Right? Nice and isolated. Good. Now it's cool again, in the middle of our quadrant. Alright, we're going to pull out, again, I like to go twice for some reason. And then just back and forth. If you hold it at in the light, you can kind of see the streak marks, so then you know where you've streaked and where you haven't. Sterilize, let it cool. Notice, by the way, I'm closing my plate in between every single quadrant. Right? There's no sense in hanging out like this. Right? There's no reason to have it open only when necessary. So we're just going to leave it closed, just like that. Okay? Nice and cool again. Again, middle of the third quadrant. Now I'm going to finish it off. Use the rest of the plate, and done. Careful not to overlap into previous quadrants. I'd rather you stay away from the quadrants rather than trying to get too close when you're first doing this. Right? But this is sterile. Now I have a very nice streak plate, and hopefully tomorrow we should have some nice isolated colonies. But since I'm going to throw this plate away, we won't see it on here, but hopefully you will have some nice isolated colonies.